Hey there, true believers. You're tuned into Baxter Building Radio via the Negative Zone feed, and welcome to episode 45 of the Fantastic Four Fancast. My name is Nate Charles. I am your host, and I am joined by my co-host. His name is Shane Murray. Shane, how you doing tonight, pal?
Be doing better if this app worked. But anyway, doing pretty good. How are you doing tonight?
Well, I am still on the tail end of getting sick, so I might be coughing periodically tonight, but I'm going to try and do so not into the microphone this evening. Uh, Still don't feel like my voice is at 100%, but we'll work with what we got. How have you been keeping busy since our last meeting?
Um, I don't even know. This week's been a blur. I feel like I've accomplished nothing, but I've been doing stuff like every night I come home, I have to go somewhere. The only thing I did definitely do was yesterday I got to see the new Mario movie. And no, it is not a great movie, but it is a extremely fun movie. And sometimes it's all you need is to shut your brain off for like 100 minutes and watch pretty lights.
Is it as good as the first Mario movie?
I enjoyed it more than the first Mario movie. It has way more references. It has references to like Super Mario Brothers 2. It has like Birdo makes an appearance in it. I don't know if you've seen the like all of the adverts, but Star Fox is in it. Like they realize that Star Fox exists.
Oh, wow. But okay, Shane, it can't possibly be as good as the first Super Mario Brothers movie.
The live action one.
Yeah, with Bob
I don't
Hoskins
no, stop.
and
Just
John
stop.
Leguizamo,
Just
Dennis
stop.
Hopper.
Just stop.
Oh, come on.
No. I don't even have the nostalgia for that movie. That movie's so bad. I'd rather watch the Super Mario Super Show.
Hey, don't you talk down about the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. Captain Lou Albano was one man doing his best on there.
I'm not talking down about it. I said it was better than that terrible Super Mario's movie.
Good. That's good. Almost had to bring the smoke at you. You know who else brought the smoke?
Um, Rose.
That's right, Rose Delaney, who was revealed to be the combustion killer back in Human Torch Volume 3, Number 5, which we covered in episode 40. Today, we are covering Human Torch Volume 3, Number 6 by Carl Kessel and Scotty Young. This is the conclusion to the Burn story arc. Now, we have covered the rest of this. Issue 1 was back in episode 23, 2 we covered in 27, 3 in 32, 4 and 36, and again, the last issue 5 was in episode 40. So if you have not listened to those yet, I would highly recommend going back and doing so. That way you'll be all caught up. This book is cover dated for November of 2003 with a release date of September 24th, 2003, and a cover price of $2.50. Shane, you know what time it is?
Um, Price is Right.
Yeah, we don't own that name though. Kind of,
No, we don't. You're
I
right.
mean,
It's
so
trademarked, I believe, somewhere.
but every week we do play this game where I, on pricecharting.com, look up the values that these books have sold for at maximum, and Shane attempts to guess what they are. We play by what we generally refer to as Price is Right rules, where Shane does try to guess the value without going over, which is sometimes easier than others. However, I
Sometimes.
think, I think we need to really nail down our branding with this. So I want to start referring to this as our Shane Showcase. How do you feel about that, Shane?
Man, I feel like between my catchphrases and things being named after me, it's becoming a one-man show, the Nate Charles Show.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's not get ahead of ourselves there, Val. Anyway, today I was only able to find the value for an ungraded copy of this book. Shane, what do you think that has sold for at maximum?
At maximum, $3.13.
You are under. I would say you are also far off. You want to take one more guess?
I'm far off. Uh,
Not like terribly far off, but far off for like in comparison to this book.
okay. So let's say $6 even.
You're still under. This book has sold for $9.64.
Okay. Um, Somebody didn't get a deal that day. Though this is a really good book. I mean, I would buy it. I don't know if I'd pay $10 for it, but if
Yeah,
you really wanted to have a copy,
I'm not sure I would either. Um, but yeah, heart wants what the heart wants, I suppose, and the wallet pays for it. Might need to revise our rules a little bit now that we've rebranded this segment of our show. We might need to set a range of what you're allowed to be to consider correct on those prices. I'll think about that for next episode.
well, we already know that I can't say a dollar, so I'm already better than that.
That was something that I was thinking about throwing around as a title was $1 Shane.
Fair enough.
All right, credits for today's issue. We have writer Carl Kessel, penciler Scotty Young, inker Joe Sung. Coloring duties were taken on by Studio F. The letterer was Corey Pettit. The assistant editors were Mark Sumerick and Andy Schmidt, editor Tom Brevoort, editor-in-chief Joe Quesada, president Bill Jemis, and keepers of the flame Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, we've been doing this for 6 episodes. How have you felt about Stan Lee and Jack Kirby being listed as keepers of the flame instead of them just saying Human Torch created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby?
I feel like you have a stronger opinion on that than I do. I like that kind of keepers of the torch or keepers of the flame thing. It's an interesting way to say created by.
So I have no idea how true this is. I almost want to say that they put Keepers of the Flame, Stanley and Jack Kirby, simply because Johnny Storm is more or less a legacy character when it comes down to it. So by introducing Johnny Storm, they were keeping the spirit of the Human Torch alive. So Keepers of the Flame, I think, works.
Yeah.
All right, Shane, would you like to hear a synopsis? This
I
issue.
would love to hear a synopsis of this issue.
Well, Marvel Unlimited has us covered, but with a single line. The first story arc comes to a close as the Torch confronts the combustion killer.
Made it straight to the point.
I never thought anything would make me long for a Shaneopsis, but that kind of does. I'm not gonna lie.
That's a pretty boring one. I hate that she's called the combustion killer also. I really wish they would have came up with a better name.
So Shane, you maybe want to do a fella a favor and hit us with a Shaneopsis for this issue. It's the last issue of the story arc. I feel like we need something with a little more I mean pizzazz is the wrong word. Uh,
Ah, um,
Zest is also the wrong word. Maybe
yeah,
train wreckability.
you just want to stare at it. Uh, yeah, I guess I could try. Johnny, Rose, and Snow finally have the conversation that they've been meaning to have since the second part of Burn, which leads to an ending that you don't see coming.
All right, all right. I can deal with that. I think remarkably close to how I would have described it too, which was Johnny Storm has a conversation. All hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
All right. The cover duties for this issue were handled by Scotty Young and Pierre Andre Derry. Shane, would you like to take us through to the cover?
Yeah. Much like the other first five parts of the story, you have the Human Torch, that crazy font that they had for this book, with those flaming number fours going across, little Marvel and the number six underneath that. And then you have Johnny It almost looks like he's bursting through some kind of floor with all the rocks and debris breaking up. It kind of looks like lava, the way that has the ground breaking out from underneath him and all the little stones and stuff flying up around him. And him just super angry. His fists are clenched, open mouth, eyes red, with the very striking like purples and reds behind the flamed on Johnny. On the shelf, this would stand out by far.
Yeah, very striking colors to this book, and that is something that we have praised with almost every episode that we've covered it, is just how well the colors in this book come together. I really like the gradient that they use for the background here, with the orange being very close to where Johnny is bursting up from this floor, segueing into a red that then goes into sort of a dull pink and then into an indigo of the night sky. Just absolutely gorgeous work here. And I'm assuming Studio F once again handled this.
Oh, that has to be Studio F colors, just going by the flame.
And we open the issue and we are immediately confronted with our recap page, which reads previously, Johnny Storm is the youngest member of the world famous Fantastic Four, with the powers and temperament of fire itself. Impulsive, restless, and thrill seeking by nature, the Torch doesn't need to wait for the rest of the FF to have adventures. He can get into trouble all by himself. While still in high school and inexperienced with his powers, Johnny burned classmate Mike Snow badly. It remained their secret. Snow went on to become a fireman, never wanting to see Johnny again, until he was forced into an uneasy alliance with the Human Torch to find the person responsible for a series of strange fires. Johnny captured Firefox, who, unknown to anyone, even Snow, was a total fake. The plan was, with the heat off, the real culprit would make a mistake and reveal himself. But things hardly ever go the way Johnny plans. Stanley presents,
Burn conclusion.
and we turn the page to find Johnny standing in a warehouse, staring down Rose Delaney, who is leaning up against some crates. Between them stands Mike Snow. And Johnny says, You? You're the one behind those weird fires? To which Rose responds, That's right, Johnny. Me, Rose Delaney. No costume, no code name, just the power. But I think that's enough. More than enough. And what does Rose do here, Shane?
She makes a little fireball between her index finger and her thumb.
And she says, I'm still new to this, but I've discovered I can make fire into any shape I want, make it move in any direction I want. With just a thought, I can make any fire go out. And Rose clenches her fist close and the fireball disappears. And with another, make a brand new blaze appear anywhere I want, like magic. And she gives a little sly smile and opens her hand again, causing another fireball to appear. Or a mutant, more likely. Shouldn't be surprised, really. After 4 generations of smoke eaters, fire's in my blood. Still, couldn't believe it myself. Didn't want to believe. Especially that first time. And we flash back to see the victim of the first strange blaze, Vinny Costello. And he was not a nice man by all accounts, kind of a very mean-spirited individual. But we have that wonderful flashback technique that they've been doing. Shane, do you want to take a moment to describe that to our listeners?
Oh yeah. So in the panel that she starts talking about, he has this very, very evil grin on his face, showing all of his teeth. And it's in black and white, with the only thing being in color is his red coat.
Rose continues, especially that first time. Vinny was no worse than usual that day. It wasn't just he rode the probies too hard. It's more he enjoyed it too much, and I finally had it. Shane, before we continue, what's a probie?
That's like their rookie. firefighter from what we found out in the other books that once they're putting through the trials to see if they can make the team.
Correct, Rose says. I felt this anger, this heat build in me, just as I was going to tell Vinny to go to hell. And what happened, Shane?
Vinny catches on fire. So this flashback image still pretty much the same idea. It's in that gray scale gradient with his red vest, but the heat, the fire actually lights up his shadow, and you get a little bit of a pink skin tone to it. I think it's more of just the radiation off of the fire than anything else.
Yeah, and those colors make for a truly horrific sensation with this panel. Like, obviously, his hair has been singed off immediately. I just can't praise this book enough for how well the pencils, the inks, and the colors just all come together to do their job. It's absolutely incredible visually.
It's a very stunning book.
And we move on to see Rose standing in a crowd of people at the next instant, where the only thing in color in this one is her red sweatshirt. And she recounts, I thought it was all coincidence, is all. A terrible coincidence. That's what it had to be, right? But then there was the brownstone fire, Brandon Crow's house. I remember hoping the fire would get that smug drug dealing scumbag, the same feeling of heat growing inside of me. And then out of nowhere, that fireball. I was transfixed, amazed, shocked, horrified. And we see Brandon Crow in silhouette running away from the fireball, which is colored in bright oranges and yellows. Rose in the foreground, now back in the present and in full color, remarks, thrilled. And when you rocketed in, Johnny, it was like I snapped out of a trance. A chill ran through me and the fireball just vanished. I felt guilty. Some part of me knowing what I wouldn't admit, I guess. So even though I kept telling myself I had nothing to do with it, I never told anyone I'd been there. Not even you, Mike. Sorry. And after Johnny collared Firefox, I was glad I hadn't said anything. It'd all been in my head. Of course I wasn't the one responsible. Of course I wasn't the one who'd done those horrible things. Yeah, only problem being Firefox wasn't real. She was just my idea of a clever ruse to make the true culprit let down their guard. Should have known I'd regret it when Sheila Donner thought it was brilliant and agreed to play the bad girl. And Mike crosses his arms and looks at Johnny skeptically. Donner, Johnny, we both know there are better reporters, namely all of them. So why do you keep working with her? I don't know. I have a lot of time. No choice. She was there. As much as I hate to admit it, she isn't completely talentless. She found the tape. What tape? The one that shows me outside Crow's house. The one she confronted me with. When she called and asked what I was hiding, all my fears came back. I panicked and things burst into fire everywhere, all around me. It was a nightmare, and I just wanted it to stop. And we see, again in flashback, that Rose goes wide eyed at Sheila's insinuations and sets her cell phone on fire, followed by the rest of Mike's backyard. She bursts into
That's
tears.
Mike's cell phone.
That's true. Yes, that is Mike's cell phone. Thank you. And then she proceeds to burst into tears, grasping her head. That was it. No more denial. No more delusion. I knew I had to accept the truth, and I knew I had to leave. But not without seeing Mike one last time, hopefully. Not without saying goodbye, at least. And we see Rose leave her business card for Empire Fire and Safety Supply Incorporated with the address of the warehouse. Duh. And here I thought Snow had the power, came in on you spilling to Donner, and snatched you so you wouldn't give him up. Figure you left that card as a clue for me, but your boyfriend had torched it so I couldn't follow. You're right about one thing. I burned it so you wouldn't follow. For all the good that did. But even if I was the one with the power, why do I bring Rose here, to where she works? because it has special significance. You two met here for the first time, maybe? Cut me some slack. I'm no detective. All I know is bad guys do stuff like this all the time. See, that's the problem. There aren't any bad guys here. What, you think I'm the next Doctor Doom? I think you did something to the Night Watchman. Yeah, I sent him home. I've worked here long enough, got enough clout, I can do that. Or is giving people the night off a crime now? What about the fireball? What about Vinny Costello? And Rose gets very remorseful and says, those were mistakes, accidents. I didn't mean for them to happen. Doesn't mean you can walk away. Why not? There's no way to prove I did those things. I turned myself in, it won't change anything. It won't fix anything. You don't own it. It'll own you. It'll haunt you for the rest of your life. Doesn't seem to have slowed you down, Johnny. And at Mike's words, Rose has the dawning realization of what, Shane?
She finally realizes how Mike actually got those scars on his face.
And she puts her hand over her mouth and gasps, you burned Mike, didn't you, Johnny? And you kept it quiet all these years. And you want me to come clean? She has her finger pointed right at Johnny's face. And now it's Johnny's turn to be remorseful as he says, I want you to learn from my mistake. Power I have, we have, is very dangerous, especially when we're first learning to use it, control it. And we have to control it every second of every day. And Rose takes umbrage with Johnny at this and begins to flame up herself and says, gee, now there's a deep, meaningful insight. Thanks. You know the way out, right? But Johnny flares up now as well, as he's not taking it well that Rose is, whether intentionally or not, threatening him with fire and says, you killed someone, Rose, and I have to live with that. Just like you have to live with scarring a man and shattering his dreams, taking away his chance at the Olympics. And what does Rose do in this panel, Shane?
Oh, dude. So she makes this fire skeleton head that has a giant jaw and these white eyes and snakes all around her and all the way out and literally dwarfs Johnny. It looks like it's the size of Johnny, if not a little bit taller. That's just the fire skull. It's so cool.
It's almost like in her emotion, it's like she put a face to both her and Johnny's guilt. Mike reaches out and puts a hand on Rose's shoulder in an attempt to calm the situation and says, didn't turn out that bad. At least I found you. And Rose brings him in close and caresses his face while putting a gentle finger on the tip of his nose and says, yeah, you did. And I never want to lose you, Mike, but I can't stay here. I just can't. Come with me. Let's go someplace we can both start over. Rose, I love you. Don't want to lose you either, but being a fireman, it's the only thing that fits me. I can't start that over. Not with my face. I'll be remembered. I'll be recognized. And the camera pulls back, but reveals what, Shane?
So it reveals that it reveals that there's a camcorder recording this conversation.
And who do we see is in control of said camcorder, Shane?
Oh, Sheila Donner and her fine self.
And how is Sheila dressed in this panel?
Black pants, black crop top, tank top, black hat, red saddlebag, boots. I don't know. Black gloves. Impractical.
You'd think she'd be doing well with stealth, except, for her exposed midriff and bright red bag, right?
Yeah.
And Sheila says, do my part to make sure of that, mate. Give us your best side for the people at Mwah! And the camera explodes. And Mike realizes what's going on immediately and yells, no, Rose, stop it. How'd you get in here, Donner? Made it to Snow's place just as you were skying away, Johnny Cakes. Followed your flame trail here, easy as peaches. So our little Rose is the firebug, eh? Beauty. The viewing public does love their women in prison pics. I'm not going to prison. I don't deserve to go to prison. I didn't do anything wrong. And Rose flares up, and her fire is starting to rage out of control. It actually starts catching random crates within the warehouse on fire. And Johnny approaches, hands up, trying to calm her demeanor down. Rose, calm. It's not definite you'll go to jail. Oh, sure. Once I'm in the system, how easy will it be to get out? No thanks. I'll take my chances on my own. And what does Rose do here, Shane?
Womb as she launches out a bunch of fire directed directly at Johnny and anything that is basically in her way.
And it produces a massive wall of flame between herself and the Human Torch. And Johnny clenches his fist and begins to calmly walk through the fire after Rose and says, Snow, Donner, get the cops. I'll get Rose. Johnny, no guarantees, Mike. And Johnny flames on and flies through the fire as Rose races towards the exit of the building. And suddenly, Johnny produces flame that melts the door to the frame. And as he hovers behind her, says, you'd think a place like this would have a good fire prevention system in place. Sprinklers, at least. I turned it off. I knew I could take care of any flare ups if things got too hot. And Rose melts a hole in the door to aid in her escape. But Johnny lets loose with a massive beam of flame and says, Girl, you have no idea. And he literally knocks the door right off of its hinges, which that has to be pretty powerful, Shane. He had just melted that thing to the frame.
Yeah, but when it's taut like that, it's super susceptible to moving.
Fair enough. And Rose looks through the door frame at the burning door as it falls down the outside stairs and says, Oh, I've got a few. Time to cool your jets, Johnny. And what does she do?
She flames Johnny off.
And Johnny hits the floor.
Yeah, with a wood.
And as he picks himself up, he begins to yell out, Flame on, flame on, flame. But nothing happens. So he gets to his feet and begins to chase after Rose. Damn it. No, you don't. And he floors her with a tackle from behind and attempts to hold her against the ground. Go. Why won't you just let me go? Because there's only one rule for people like us: do no harm. You can never hurt anybody, ever. And suddenly, a large hand places itself on Johnny's shoulder. And who is it, Shane?
Mr. Mike Snow.
Who says, I think she got the message, Johnny. Mike? I thought, told you to get the cops. Donner can get them. You okay, Rose? You got a funny way of showing how not to hurt people, Storm. I never wanted to hurt anyone, not from the start. But you think the cops will believe that? Obviously you don't. Doesn't matter. I do. And what does Mike do here, Shane?
Walk as he clocks Johnny in the face.
And Johnny hits the floor, at the very least stunned. You say you'll never hurt anyone? That's good enough for me, Rose. I'll never let anyone hurt you. Come on. Johnny's tougher than he looks. Don't know how long he'll stay down. And Mike takes Rose by the hand and leads her from the warehouse to his truck. But what does he find?
He finds that his tires are melted.
So much for a fast getaway. Turn that frown upside down. Johnny didn't melt my tires. Then again, he thought you were the criminal mastermind, Rose says as she hops into her truck. Mike follows her and they take off going down the road. And as they're driving, Rose remarks, I'm sure gonna miss him. But Mike, looking over his shoulder out the back window of the vehicle, says, Not for long. And what is he seeing, Shane?
Oh, he sees Johnny flying through the sky right at them.
And Rose begins muttering to herself, no, so close, a little farther, a little more time. And her eyes flare up with flame. And what happens?
She flames Johnny off with a
And Johnny is careening earthward. And Mike yells, what are you doing, Rose? Stop it. Johnny's falling to his death. I I didn't do anything. I didn't mean to. I don't want to hurt Johnny. I don't want to hurt anyone. And Johnny is careening towards trees, which will hopefully break his fall, as Rose says, ever again. And she crashes her truck into one of these trees.
womb.
And Johnny finally yells, flame on! And manages to catch himself with a burst of fire before he impacts with the ground. Meanwhile, Mike Snow attempts to pull himself from the wreckage of Rose's truck. Rose? While where have they ended up here, Shane?
They've ended up outside of a fence that has like barbed wire above it. Maybe a shipping dock.
And Rose makes her way to the chain link fence and says, stay, stay there, Mike. One more thing I gotta do. And she melts her way through the fence as Johnny follows in hot pursuit. And she has made her way into this building. And what does Johnny do?
Johnny enters the most Johnny Storm way possible. Thakum as he goes right through the wall and shoots concrete everywhere.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you here slightly, Shane, because I feel like he would have dove through a window if it was the most Johnny Storm way possible. This feels like the most Ben Grimm way possible.
He's gone through like 15 roofs. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but this is a wall.
I guess he Kool-Aid manned his way into the building.
Fair enough. We'll go with that. And he burst in behind Rose, who has dropped to her knees solemnly, and she says, sorry about shutting your flame off like that, Johnny. Accident. Little practice. Sure it wouldn't happen again. Just like I'm sure Mike and me could have gotten away. He's everything to me, you know? And he'd give up everything for me, even being a fireman. But you're right, Johnny. We can't hurt anyone. And if Mike gave up firefighting because of me, I'd be hurting him worst of all. Tell him I love him, Johnny. Tell him goodbye for me. And what does Rose do here, Shane?
She pretty much gives out a final sacrifice as she basically releases all of her fire ability in one fell swoop.
Rose, no, there's another. And what happens to the building that Johnny and Rose are in?
Shwoom as the building implodes upon itself.
And our scene shifts to sometime later where we see the foundation of this building still stands while firefighters and paramedics have begun to surround the area. At the end of the pier, Mike leans over the water. Next to him stands Johnny, as Mike says, didn't find a body. They didn't find most of the pier, Mike. Only reason I survived is because of my powers. Rose had powers. And from behind them approaches whom, Shane?
Sheila Donner in her infinite wisdom.
With a tape recorder in hand, as she says. Care to comment on that, Mr. Snow? Share your pain with the world? Got a camera crew be here shortly. And Mike whirls around and puts his finger in Sheila's face and says, sure, I'll share my pain. Mike, try a little compassion for a change, Donner. Let this one slide. Rose paid for what she did. No reason to drag her name through the mud. Actually, there's two reasons. First, we had a deal. Second, it was her bloody misfortune to muck about with you, Johnny, and when you're involved, it's headlines. Okay, if it's all about me, then forget about Rose, and I'll give you a story that's really about me. And we turn the page to find ourselves looking at a newscast hosted by Sheila Donna along New York's East River, where I learned the world famous Johnny Storm played a little too much with fire in his early days of the Human Torch and burned a man horribly. Most awful thing in my whole life. Wasn't keeping it secret as much as I was trying to forget it. But something like that stays with you forever. Mike's had it much worse, of course. I can never make up for what I did to him, except by making sure it never happens again. Mike Snow, a prominent high school wrestler when he fell victim to Storm's notorious hot temper, seems to have more physical scars than emotional ones. You can't live in the past. You have to move on. And our scene once again shifts to outside of Mike's townhouse, where what do we see, Shane?
Mike's packing up to move.
Yeah, we see the U-Haul truck or whatever brand it might be in the Marvel Universe parked outside. As inside, Mike packs boxes when Johnny enters and says, "Hey, so the rumor's true, huh?" Looks that way. Should have called. Bet we could have gotten Ben to load you up in no time for a couple dozen Krispy Kremes. Doing it myself, thanks. Know where everything is. Sorry about all the fuss the last few weeks, the media attention and stuff. Know it's opened old wounds. Certainly hasn't made your life easier. But I had to give Donner something, and you did the right thing, Johnny. The most heroic thing I've ever seen you do. And I'm glad you did it. Glad it's out. Sure, people are staring and whispering, but I got used to that a long time ago. I'm not leaving because of your big revelation. Contrary to what Sheila Donner said, Johnny, everything does not center around you. It's just this place, this city, too many memories. Time for a fresh start. Clean slate. And this fresh start, still a fireman? Yeah, working an engine in Portland, Oregon. Oregon? Can't get much farther away than that. Not that I take it personally. Maybe I'll even come visit. Don't go out of your way. Maybe you haven't noticed, Johnny, but bad things happen to me when you're around. Yeah, sometimes, I guess. But after all we'd been through, I thought maybe, you know, it didn't make us friends, Johnny. But we've never been enemies either. No, why I didn't like you in high school. Sure, you were state wrestling champ, Olympic bound, big man on campus until I came along and stole your thunder. Please. I didn't like you because I thought you were a poser. That without your powers, no one would give you the time of day. And I thought that because that's what I thought about myself. Without wrestling, I was nothing, a nobody. But I was wrong about both of us. You're a good guy, Johnny. Got a good heart. I'd go into a burning building with you, for you, but I wouldn't let you date my sister. Gee, Snow, I didn't know you were left-handed. Know the worst day of my life? The day you burned me. Know the best? The day after. That's the day I decided to become a fireman. I had some idea it would help me deal with what happened, give me some sense of control over it, I guess. But the more I got into firefighting, the more I just plain loved it. Felt alive for the first time in my life. Felt I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I'm not saying I'm glad I got burned, but I am trying to say thank you, Johnny. Huh. Don't really know if I should say you're welcome. No, no, probably not. So, Portland, you think you're gonna like it there? Know what it's known as? What? City of Roses. And our final page shows Mike's framed picture of himself with Rose, his hand on her shoulder, as we have the end. Special thanks to Steve Matson, who received a special citation for saving a life while on duty as a Portland firefighter, for his invaluable help with this story. That's kind of cool that we find out that with Carl Kessel's story here that he had professional input. I mean, obviously, it's important as a writer to do your research and whatnot, but I always like when we get a shout out for those who help put the story together.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool touch also when I saw that it was they had a firefighter help them put this together.
Well, Shane, that is the end of Burn. The storyline, not the run that we've been covering on week threes. But what have you thought about this?
So I did have some notes for this. I think that this first part of the Human Torch volume, what's volume three, right?
Yeah, weirdly enough, volume one of Human Torch, just for context, was the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond, the one published in the 40s in the Golden Age. And then volume two was actually a reprint series. The first part would usually be a Golden Age Human Torch story, and then the second part would be a reprint of the Johnny Storm's adventures over in Strange Tales. So this is actually the first volume Human Torch that is original Johnny Storm stories.
Yeah. So I thought that I know this is what 12 the whole volume's 12 issues, right?
I do believe so, yes.
I thought that this first part, I think it was a really good story for Johnny because there's a little detective stuff, which is really seems out of play, but it was cool for some growth for Johnny. There's a little coming of age in there because it goes from like the high school background up until where Johnny's at right now. You see a little bit of the tale of life outside of the superheroes, the people that are involved in the day to day around the superheroes. And you really get to see Johnny growth as a character over this, from where you see him trying to like hot hand his way through high school to where he literally to protect Rose and Mike tells the worst thing that he ever did, which was burn Mike. So I at least recommend this if you have any interest in Johnny Storm, or if you think that Johnny Storm is like a one-dimensional character. This really shows that there's more to Johnny Storm than meets the eye.
I can't help but agree with literally everything you said, Shane. And sometimes I feel like Johnny is underrated. You hear people talk about Ben, you hear people talk about Sue, especially after last year's movie with Fantastic Four First Steps. Well, obviously I'm a Reed fan. There are those of us around, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about Johnny. And I feel like Johnny's heyday for a lot of things was back in the 60s when he did have that solo series in Strange Tales. And there's part of me that feels like he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit in modern times. This series certainly does wonders in fleshing him out for a modern audience. Can't help but recommend it enough.
Yeah, I would like to see some more. Though I do love the new Uncle Johnny stuff. The Uncle Johnny stuff's great.
Yeah, aside from that mustache, everything's.
That mustache. It leaves something to be desired, but yeah.
Shall we move on to our Fantastic Four of the week?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually go first this time. Start off with Fantastic Frame. I'm not gonna lie. So this issue for me is a lot of denouement. So it was difficult for me to kind of pick a favorite panel. I almost went with the cover, quite frankly. And when I get to my grim grumbling, you'll actually understand why I almost just went with the cover. But I did instead end up finalizing my decision as page 8, panel 3, which is when Rose makes that skull construct with her powers. And what I really liked about it is because I mean, obviously she has come a long way with her abilities in a short span of time. And I just feel like it's really poignant because, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like that face that she brings up kind of really symbolizes the guilt that both her and Johnny carry for their mishaps here. Mike has facial scars, so obviously, he's been burned on his head. It also very much evokes Vinny Costello when they see him in the morgue. So I don't know. I just thought that there was a lot said with that image about multiple characters. I thought it was a really well done feat. Everything from the idea, from the writing, right down through all the artwork and how it came together. How about you, Shane?
Same panel. It is the best single panel in this book. The only other thing I thought about doing was the end panel where you have them together in the portrait. I thought that was a nice touch. But the skull that really just looks like Vinny's mouth being open when he's on fire, that just was like, yeah, that's a down to the fact that it has the white eyes like she has when she uses her fire powers. And then again, going with the lighting, just showing the lighting around the boxes just from where the fire is to where like the shadow is against it. Uh, I couldn't say more about this panel.
Awesome. Sometimes I feel like it's a cop out when we're both on the same page or panel. But I think this one more than merits it. But how about your grim grumbling for the week? What bothered you in this week's issue?
So I went with page 11, panels 2 and 4, where Johnny heats the door up and then she just pokes a hole into it. Because if you go to the next page, you see Johnny just blast through it with like a fire blast. If you know how metal works, like you've been to a Ren fair, I'm sure. You've
Yeah,
seen a blacksmith somewhere. How do they move steel?
tongs.
No, like how do they move steel? So if you start with a block, how do you make it long?
You hammer it.
But what does it have to be for you to hammer it?
It has to be taut.
Correct. That door would have been so hot she could have just right through that door.
Okay, I mean, it's fair.
That's why Johnny was able to just blow that door right off the hinges. This is like the one panel that shows the big difference between Johnny knowing where his fire powers are and her knowing where her fire powers are. Johnny understood the physics behind the door.
Okay, so I guess what I need to ask is what is your because you're making it sound like just yeah, Roses knew with her powers, so she didn't know exactly what to do, but Johnny knew the physics of it. So what is your problem with
My
it?
my biggest problem with it was I guess just Rose's solution to it was just to make a hole in the door that she's not even big enough to really get through. It doesn't look like.
I mean, I guess there's that. Yeah, it is kind of a slow solution for what is an urgent problem for her. Okay. Yeah. It's the details. I can see you being frustrated with a character choice.
What was yours, bud?
So, I haven't really noticed this before in previous issues. I even tried to take a look back a little bit this afternoon to see if it was maybe just something I was missing. But I think the most egregious examples for my grim grumbling are page 4, panel 3, and page 7, panel 6. Johnny's torso and neck are just way too long in this issue. I mean, in some panels, looking at them, particularly the ones I just pointed out, it's almost like he switched powers with Reed Richards. And it's one of the reasons why I had problems determining a favorite panel because it would just keep pulling me out of the story with how lengthy his neck and torso were. I never really think of Johnny as a lanky individual. And this is I mean, lanky is an understatement with some of these drawings.
I think the belt line, especially on was that page 6, really makes it look like his torso is way broader than it is because his belt is like brought way down low. Where if that belt was properly where it should be, I think it wouldn't look as bad. But the neck, I did have a problem with a lot of the neck in this issue also. I think the neck felt way too tall.
But I hate crumbling about artwork. Scotty Young is a legend in the industry at this point. But keep in mind, this was over 20 years ago. He's getting his start. Things like this are bound to happen. But it did pull me out of the story a bit. What he did do a marvelous job of rendering, though, is my cosmic cliffhanger on page 18, panel 5, which is when Rose causes that warehouse to explode around her, which left me with a lot of questions. Is she hurt? Is Johnny hurt? Is this a ruse to cover up her going into her new life? Well, it's been 23 years, and I think it's safe for us to say at this point that Rose Delaney died in that explosion, but something you're not sure about until you've turned the page, at the very least.
Yeah, that explosion definitely was a scary panel. I can't disagree more with that. That was not mine though. I went with Page 9, panel 7. That's where she starts, like the eyes start glowing and the fire starts going up around her. Right after she blew up the camcorder in Sheila's hands, where like Snow's trying to keep a control over her and all. Because you literally don't know where she's going from there. We've seen her light somebody on fire. You've seen her chase somebody with a fireball. She's just a wild card at this point.
Yeah, honestly, Sheila Donner comes out of that situation pretty lucky because, I mean, considering what happened to Vinny Costello, she could have just been out in smoke pretty fast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So was it book 3 that they was when you explained that the fire moved through his whole body in like instants?
Yep.
Like, yeah, it could have been over real fast for little tiny Sheila Donner there.
And that was literally with her just, according to this issue, thinking burn in hell. Like that was all it took. So, yeah, Sheila Donner is one lucky individual at this point. Well, Shane, who did you have for your most fantastic player this issue?
I ended up giving it to Johnny because of his growth, where he, to protect Rose and Mike, decided that he would tell the story of what he did in high school. And he burnt Mike so that Mike couldn't go be an Olympic athlete.
And I did it for exactly the same reason. I am big on honesty and accountability, and the fact that Johnny went and did that in order to spare Mike any more pain and to keep Rose's name from being dragged through the dirt. Uh, yeah, definitely the biggest and most impactful part of this issue, if not this entire storyline. So yeah, Johnny more than earned MFP this issue.
I think we touched on everything. I don't really have much more to say on this book. I wish they would put this out as like a like a smaller trade and sell this for like $11. Put this into everyone's hands so that they can see that Johnny is actually like a valuable member to society and to the Fantastic Four. He offers more than just hijinks.
Well, Shane, the good news is that they have, because that is how I have been experiencing the story. And that's a perfect segue for me being able to tell our listeners where they can find this story. The Human Torch Burn trade paperback was first released in April of 2009 and just recently had a reprinting in the last couple of years. That's the one I bought and have been reading as we've been going on this adventure. And then there is also Human Torch by Kessel and Young, the complete collection, which has all 12 issues of Volume 3, which was first republished in July 2014. You can also find this on Marvel Unlimited or in the back issue bins of your local comic book store. Shane, what are we doing next week?
Um, oh, it's the X-Men annual, the tie-in to the Burn stuff.
Yeah, so as our longtime listeners, and even our short-term listeners, would know probably by this point, on the third week of every month, though we are in a 5-week month, and did our first week as April Fool's, so we're kind of pushed back. We normally cover John Byrne's run on the Fantastic Four. When we left our quartet in Volume 1, Issue 235, which we covered in episode 41, they had just defeated Ego the Living Planet and were on a trip back from Mercury's orbit. Their next appearance, technically, after that, is in X-Men Volume 1, Annual Number 5 by Chris Claremont and Brent Anderson. That is a 40-page story that we will be doing a foreshortened version of next week. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our foreshortened format, I believe the last time we utilized it was when we covered Superman Fantastic Four: The Infinite Destruction by Dan Jurgens back in episode 9. That is when, instead of going panel by panel, we more or less go page by page. Shane and I split up the story and rotate and describe what's going on. That is the format that we will be using next week, or else we'll be here for, 3 hours. And not everybody
Oh,
has that kind of time.
It's a Claremont book. It'd be like 4 hours, and you'd have
It's,
to make up like 17,000 voices.
yeah, because we have both the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. and the Badoon. And, oh my gosh, it's gonna be crazy. So yeah, four shortens the way we're going, and that might give my voice a chance to recover from being sick. So we hope you will join us again next week when we tackle that story again. That is X-Men Volume One, Annual Number Five by Chris Claremont and Brant Anderson, which was also the creative team on what many people consider to be the definitive X-Men story, God Loves, Man Kills. So no slouches here. As always, listeners, your feedback is extremely important to us. We would highly appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a comment or a review on Spotify. You can subscribe to us on your preferred listening platform so we show up in your feed each and every week. We are on Facebook at the Fantastic Four Fancast, where we encourage you to engage in FF related discussions and share Fantastic Four content. We only ask that you adhere to those group rules that we have set up, the most important of which is being respectful of your fellow posters. You can also follow us on Instagram at Fan4Fancast. That is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST. And finally, you can contact us by email at fan4fancast@gmail.com. Again, that is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST@gmail.com. Shane, do you have any final thoughts for the true believers this week?
No, I think I've put it out there pretty much hardcore. I highly recommend reading this. Please go find it. Read it however you can. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's not long.
And we can sit here and describe it, but nothing does justice to Scotty Young, Joe Sung, and the Studio F colorist. The artwork in this book is phenomenal, and you doing yourself a disservice by not checking it out.
Yeah,
As always, Shane, I'm glad you joined me on another Fantastic Four adventure this week, and I cannot wait to do so again next week.
this should be uncanny.
Oh, listen to you. And we hope you will join us again next week as well, true believers. Shane Murray, I'm Nate Charles. Until then, stay fantastic.